Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to get together this morning and for a little bit of your time, as I know we're back now from the holiday break. Happy New Year to all of you. Welcome, and again, thank you so much for your time. As is tradition, we'd like to begin this morning with some introductions of folks who are here and share with you quickly a little bit about them. First, I'd like to acknowledge our board members who were able to be here this morning. I'd like to first introduce our board president, Ken Nunez, and our board member, Greg Sherman. Thank them for being here this morning. Board member Zumwalt, who you know is a very dedicated board member, asked me to please extend his regrets. He had a previously scheduled conflict that he just couldn't change. Board member Cardoza just sent me a text and said, "I'm so sorry, but darn it, I got that flu." And so we thanked her for not coming and sharing. And board member Mann also extended his regrets for not being here. I'd like to also take a moment, as we typically have done now the last few years, to introduce our President Scholars. Just a quick reminder of why we're all here and the hard work that we do. So I'd like to ask our scholars at this time for a moment, please stand and kind of turn and face. Remember how we practiced the parade wave? Let me give you a little bit about this group. By the way, they're not all able to be here either. If you can imagine being 18 or 19 years old and having the president of the college say, "Hey, can you get here at 8 on Friday?" We had a few who were not able to do that. But what a great group. We have a combination now of our freshmen and sophomores who are in the program. I just thought I would share with you. I'm sorry, you guys. I was going to try to make it through without my glasses, but the average GPA for both our freshman and sophomore classes for this year for the first semester was 3.9. Pretty good. I'm going to hunt down that 0.1 wherever it is. We have 8 out of our 17 who nailed a perfect 4.0, and we have 5 of our sophomores already confirmed for their transfer to a 4-year college in the fall. So congratulations to our President Scholars. Okay, you guys, you can sit down. See how they're so... Okay. All right, so we want to concentrate this morning on an update. Our mid-year convocation is typically a quick check of where we are on the most important items that are happening right now in the middle of the year. I do want to, before I forget, make sure that we all know where we're going right after this. And the request today was to try to, because we have great stuff planned for the morning, some workshops and some meetings, faculty, classified staff, different departments and divisions. So our goal this morning is to make convocation succinct, get to the point, and then get everybody moving on. So for our General Assembly agenda this morning, we're going to cover a few really timely issues right now. We're going to give you a quick update of where we are with our search and selection for our next president. As we have been working on very hard this first semester, an update on where we are with our accreditation preparation. A quick update again for all of our benefits on the status of the new mandates. Specifically, we'll spend a little time in the large group today demystifying guided pathways. And then, of course, an update of where we are now in finalizing and beginning to prepare for adoption of our next 3-year strategic plan. Okay, so let's go to superintendent search and selection. I know many of you have asked questions, and it feels a little bit like this process is somewhat ambiguous, and that's certainly not the intent. So for those of you who may not have had experience going through this kind of process before, one of the things about a superintendent search and selection process is it's a confidential process. That doesn't mean it's secret. That means that we work with an outside consultant. The consultant works directly with the board and staff. And the reason that the elements of it are confidential in the early stages is really a matter of providing some integrity for the candidates. If you're a candidate for a position like this, you're likely a vice president or a sitting president. You're in another job in another setting. And you all know that when there's someone aspiring to leave your institution who's in a high-profile position, it can feel a little anxious and it can be a little bit disruptive. So to protect those candidates who are applying but may not make it all the way to the finalist or the end of the process, it's kept confidential in the beginning stages. That way, as the process moves forward, only those candidates who end up really in the final stages of competition for the position are the ones who have to go back and give an explanation to their staffs, and you don't unnecessarily disrupt other folks. So we just wanted you to know what the timeline is. We adjusted this very early in the fall, and it's been consistent ever since. Many of you may remember the e-news updates that we've been sending out. But the application advertisement period opened late September and closed right before the winter break. And so now we're beginning the process of screening all of the applications that have come in. We have what's called the College Community and Stakeholder Panel. That's a representative panel modeled very much after how we design our participatory governance. It has representatives on it from our constituent groups, faculty representatives, classified representatives, community representatives, board member representatives. So a little different than the way we've done it in the past. We have a new board policy and an administrative procedure that prescribes our process now, and we modeled that after the way we set up our other committees and constituent group structures. So that College Community and Stakeholder Panel will be conducting the screening of the applications. They have two jobs in the process. They'll be conducting the screening of the applications, and they'll be recommending to the board candidates that they believe should be interviewed in the first round. The second panel that you see in the middle of that middle line there are the Technical Experts Panel. There's two stages to an interview in this process. When you come in as a candidate, you get an opportunity to sit before a college community and stakeholder panel, a representative group of faculty, staff, community. The assessment going on in that portion of the interview is about the skills, traits, and characteristics that candidates bring in all of those areas that they're interacting directly with the campus and the college and the district. Their leadership style, their communication style, their philosophy of education, their various background and understanding on a variety of those issues. So as they interact with those constituent groups, the representatives in that panel are assessing the candidates around a series of questions that are designed to do that. Then the candidate would move from the first panel to the second panel. The technical experts are just that. They're a group of typically technical expert staff in the institution, including managers, faculty, board members, and they're there to ask more detailed questions about the most critical areas of technical expertise. Another way to say it is the things that could really cause a district some serious challenges, like laws related to personnel, collective bargaining, experience working with boards, finance and budget and understanding. While there are people that we delegate that to in our jobs, I think there's also a responsibility for the people in the president position to have a pretty good understanding of those so that they can help hold the whole system accountable. So at that technical expert level, the questions go a little deeper into detailed level of understanding. Those two panels actually assess the candidates independently. And then there's what's called kind of a blind scoring. The technical experts score the candidates based on the questions in the technical realm. The college and community stakeholder panel scores them on the questions in the community relations leadership realm. And they're done separately. And the reason for that is oftentimes we've all been involved in interview processes before. If you just have the one big panel, the college community stakeholder, there's never enough time in that one panel to get into enough detail to understand the level of knowledge that's really necessary that you would get in that technical arena. So oftentimes, someone can speak very, very well in there. I've been involved as an interviewer in both parts of this process, and I was part of a community-based panel, and I had a number one choice for the candidate that I believed would be a successful, in this case, city manager. And after the technical panel did their review, and we got a chance to see how all the candidates did with the technical questions, the person that I was the highest on didn't demonstrate the same level of competency in the technical skills. That's an important distinction to be able to make. So that's the reason they're conducted separately, and that's the reason candidates are processed separately. The third piece is the in-basket scenario. And this is a typical component of a process like this. They will be given a period of time to sit independently, usually in front of a computer with a prompt. And the prompt is going to give them a real-life scenario that drops into the superintendent president's in-basket at any time during their tenure. And they're going to have to be able to not only think about that prompt and assess it, but formulate a response, be able to prepare that in writing, make some sense of it, and submit it back to the process. Usually a timed activity. So again, a really good way of getting to understand what the level of the candidate's abilities are in that area. Then all three of those results are brought back together. The two panels will have an opportunity to come together when that's done and actually see how did the candidates do in both arenas. And then they look for the frequency. Who rose to the top maybe of both? And they begin to formulate their recommendation to the board about who they might suggest be the finalists that the board interviews. Okay? All of that information then comes to the board, and the board has the final determination on who those finalists will be, and the board, as a sitting body by themselves, along with the consultant, conducts those finalist interviews. They will, in this case, you see, ask the finalists to appear and present in a public forum. We've done that in the past. And if necessary, a candidate from outside the district, the board would also take some time to go visit that candidate, that finalist candidate's current assignment and talk to people where they currently work in their district and their community. You can see how we've lined up the timelines. The screening of those applications starts today. The candidates will be interviewed in the first round on February 8th and 9th. Then it takes a little bit of time. You bring the groups back together. You get a recommendation for those that will move on as finalists. The consultant has to have time to do a detailed research reference check on all of those finalists. And then we give those finalists a week or so to prepare for travel if they're coming in from out of town. So that moves us down to those finalist interviews happening on March the 2nd. And that's just before we hold our regularly scheduled board meeting in March, which is on the 12th. And on March the 12th, it's our hope that the board will have completed the process and be able to announce at the March board meeting who our next president superintendent will be. Make sense? And then on March 13th, I'm fully aware that I'll be working on a card table out in the hallway of the Sequoia building, and you all will be passing by wondering, hey, who's that vendor out there? What's he doing? Okay, let's shift gears now and take a look at where we are on our accreditation institutional self-evaluation report. You'll remember when we opened this fall that we shared information with you about that. We're doing our accreditation self-report right alongside our district master plan, or in this case, our strategic plan update. And we're wondering now what we were thinking, but we did design those to happen both at the same time. And ideally, it's because they inform each other and they allow us to really use some of the same information on all sides of our district to complete both of those documents. So we did, you'll recall, establish an accreditation work group. That accreditation work group in late spring of 17 was formulated. We broke ourselves into 4 subgroups, one associated with each of the 4 major accreditation standards. And of course, within each of those 4 major areas, there's multiple substandards that we work on. Each of the subgroups met regularly, looked at those standards, assessed our institution to the best of their ability in how our efforts are to fulfill those standards, and then also began to identify solid examples and documented evidence so that we could be building the base for our report. We now have a draft of that self-study. If you receive your COS e-news, you'll remember that they've been coming out regularly. Here's the information that's been prepared on Standard 1. When that hits the big e-news distribution, that's everyone's opportunity to see that and everyone's opportunity to provide us feedback. Many of you have done that, and we're very appreciative of that. Coming up this month, see up there in January, is an accreditation summit. There's one new component to the new accreditation process, and it's the opportunity to do kind of what's called a quality focus essay. And it's an opportunity to take a look at key things that are happening in your district and create an additional document to show how effective you are in doing those and what you would like to do to continue to do those better. There's a number of different ways we can go in selecting what we want to highlight in our quality focus essay. So the purpose of our summit coming up at the end of this month is to bring a representative group together and provide us feedback and input on how to do that best. Then we'll be wrapping up the self-study, believe it or not. We will move that on to the Board of Trustees for reads and approval. It will go through the governance process following that summit. It's going to be seen in District Governance Senate. It's going to be seen in Academic Senate. We will share elements of it with our Student Senate. And then it'll go to the Board of Trustees for approval. We'll submit it in July at the end of the academic year. And I want to note that our accreditation visit was originally scheduled for October 8th, and it's been rescheduled now a week earlier. So our visiting team will be here next October 1st through October 4th. So early in the fall, we'll have our accreditation visit. And then the process from there is the visiting team will prepare their report. They'll submit it to the ACCJC. The ACCJC will review it, and they'll provide us our letter, response, and action. After the first of the year, it would be the beginning of 2019. It'd be around January or February that we get that action letter. I do want to give a special shout out, and those of you who have been a part of this in the past, you know the work that's involved. But we had in addition to the accreditation work group, we had a small team get together and volunteer. Okay, they were voluntold to be able to help put this draft document together. So Dr. Jennifer Lacerna, Dr. Deborah Nolan, Dr. Sarah Harris, let's just give a special thank you to them for that extra effort. This is the little flyer. We hope you saw this in your e-news. We would love to have as many of you there. You know we try to attach a theme to all of our summits. But coming up to work on that quality focus essay, it's going to be in 4D. I know 3D. I'm not sure what 4D is. So I'm going just to see what 4D is. I don't know. All right. Let's take a look at the new statewide initiatives. You may recall the passage of Assembly Bill 19 earlier this year. It's also known as the College Promise. And the intent of this legislation was to stimulate a conversation, I think, statewide about what the state and our institutions have to do to be able to march back toward providing community college free of charge for all students. There's a movement afoot, since we're part of a K-14 system, for the state budget to begin to subsidize community colleges enough so that we could offer community college to all students tuition free. It's a difficult challenge now, of course, statewide, because that's a very expensive proposition to try to get back to. But that's the kind of spirit or the intent behind that piece of legislation. So here's how it unfolded. First, what we know now as the Board of Governors waiver, we've had in place for a long time. And that's a waiver where there is already a substantial amount of money from the state budget that subsidizes the cost of tuition for students if they fill out the FAFSA and they meet those eligibility requirements. So typically, students who come from lower income families have the opportunity to apply for the waiver. It's granted, and they come tuition free already. And so at College of the Sequoias, in any given year, it could be between 6 out of 10, maybe 7 out of 10 of our students would qualify for eligibility under that BOG waiver. So the first thing the legislation did is it changed the name of the money we're already spending. And so it will no longer be called the BOG waiver. Now those students who have and will continue to be eligible for the BOG waiver are going to receive it under the name of the Promise Grant. So it's at least a name change to begin to give an identity to this idea of promising all students tuition-free college in their first year. It proposed that it be there for all students starting in 2018. That was the hope in the legislation. It was going to require a fairly substantial allocation in the budget that we're going to look at for next year. The hope was that there would be enough of an appropriation there, maybe $40 to $50 million, to try to offset statewide what the costs were for roughly 25% to a third of our students statewide who are currently paying tuition because they're not eligible for the Promise Grant. As the state budget unfolded, and the first blush is out there now, the governor's January budget was released this week. There is an appropriation in the governor's January budget. He's proposing that we spend $46 million statewide to try to offset the cost for those students who are currently paying tuition. You can see there, you guys, it's just not nearly enough. What that equates to in a typical per FTES kind of formula is about $360,000 for COS. And the costs that we would have for 25% to a third of our students paying their full tuition far exceeds that $368,000. So since there wasn't enough to be able to fund that fully for at least 1 year, the details of that bill now say, and you can see in number 4, that this money, if passed, will authorize colleges to spend Promise funds on an array of activities in support of student access and completion goals. So for some colleges, they may already have some infrastructure, a big foundation, or some sort of another subsidy that they could take their share of the money, put it together with what they currently have, and maybe achieve the goal of free tuition for all students for next year. Other institutions are not going to be able to do that. So in our case, that money alone is not enough. So we're not staking our claim right now. We're not going to begin a marketing campaign that there will be free tuition for all students. We need to complete this year's budget development process as a district and determine whether or not we want to try to achieve that as a goal. At any rate, we would be eligible for some of that money, and you all know there's certainly a number of things that we can be doing to better support our students' access and their completion. So one of the criteria for being eligible for this funding is that we needed to be a participant in what's called the guided pathways. And you've heard a little bit about guided pathways. And guided pathways is not a state mandate per se, but it's tied to getting the promised money, and it's going to be tied to getting additional money in the future. So we're not going to be members of one of the community colleges that happens to serve students in one of the poorest regions in the state that says, no, we don't want to get that extra money to try to improve access and completion. There's a fair amount of just political expectation that institutions in our region do this, and we participate. So we've jumped in to the Guided Pathways movement. We've completed our initial self-assessment, and by March of this year, we will be submitting a 3-year Guided Pathways implementation plan. Here's the good news as we go through this morning's presentation. We don't really have to do anything dramatically different in our preparation, particularly because we've already started to steer our master plan and strategic plan now preparation toward setting strategic plan objectives and planned actions that are aligned with the kinds of things that would be required in the guided pathways. So we're still trying to feed our COS machine and let it process outcomes in a natural way that work for us. Okay, a couple of quick comments about this. It is not a new initiative. You don't see it out there as something that's going to be mandated, but it does allow you to get additional resources. If we successfully participate in this, we will be receiving additional funding to be able to get the work done. It's a framework to organize the existing efforts that we have. So what we're learning now as we study is guided pathways looks a little bit different at every community college. We kind of like that, even though the concepts are consistent. What we know we need to do, we can do ourselves here at COS, and we have the freedom to do that. The model's based on research that's been underway now for over a decade across the country. Dozens of other states have successfully implemented a guided pathways formula in their community colleges, and there's a database now of research to support its success. It is an opportunity as we go through designing a framework for us to at least take another look at everything we are doing and conduct some sort of a gap analysis if there's something missing. So from that standpoint, just the exercise itself is healthy and positive. Of course, we would want to fill those gaps, and then the idea would be to maximize our cumulative impact as we get all of our initiatives moving in the same direction and we integrate them so that we're leveraging resources across what used to be separate programs now to serve common bodies of students, okay? For the last 2 years, there's been 25 of our community college colleagues who entered into an early pilot. They got some funding to train their staff. They got some funding to develop the additional elements of successful guided pathways that they felt were necessary. And they've been gathering data now and building research. So one of the things that I want to share with you is a quick little video that's been prepared, 4 minutes or so, that's been prepared by the Chancellor's office. And it really does a pretty good job of highlighting what guided pathways can be and what it's starting to look like among these 25 pilot colleges, and also what the faculty, administration, and classified staff conversations are around their guided pathways work. So I'm going to ask you to indulge us as we take a minute.
My story begins, like so many classic tales, with our hero, me, in a green apron, scrawling a name on a cardboard cup. As I watch a well-dressed patron slurp up the equivalent value of my hourly wage, I think about my college degree. I've completed 98 units. That's more than what I need to graduate. But I'm still a semester short, and unless I switch my major to quantum mechanics and invent a time machine, my get a degree in 2 years plan is out of reach.
When it comes to education, we all don't learn the same. We all have different types of learning styles. We all come from different backgrounds.
So many classes to choose from. They just gave you this sheet of paper and there was like, pick a class from here, and there was like 30 classes and they only had it by their number. I didn't even have the name of the classes, so you're like, all right, I guess I'll have to look into it.
I want to know that I'm taking the correct courses, doing what I have to do to obtain a degree. When there's lack of communication, sometimes the students don't really feel that they have that support and they don't end up finishing their degree.
It's California's responsibility to help people with that support because it's so big. We should all have support every single day.
Is that Jen? The student in my physics class 2 years ago? Didn't she say she was studying to be an environmental engineer? I thought she would have graduated by now. I know the system doesn't always make it easy, but our college is committed to student success, and we work at it every day. Our completion rate should be solid. We need a way to help students complete college on time. We need to improve the process without losing the experience of discovery. We need guided pathways. Guided Pathways is an integrated student success system that... Oh, here we go. Clearer pathways and better communication? A support system that puts student outcomes first? This is exactly what I've been saying all along. We need clarity. We need structures that make sense to students. We need another cappuccino.
Guided pathways provide an opportunity for the college to focus our many student success efforts into an integrated framework of student support.
When you really take a hard look at the data, and if you're really willing to analyze yourself, it's really very sobering, to be honest. You have a moral imperative to change what it is that you're doing to help meet the needs of our students. It's not enough just to say the students couldn't handle it and they had to go elsewhere. To me, it's our responsibility to make sure that they can succeed.
For me, it's like when I have a ticket to fly somewhere on a plane, and I've got that ticket, I want to get to the end, but if TSA and the baggers and the ticket counter and the escalators and everything aren't all working in concert to get me to that plane, I could do pieces right but not get at the end of my goal. So that's what I think all of the people that are working on pathways across every different discipline and silo and work group, that's what they're going to be able to do. They're going to look from the student perspective and then help them make it to the end.
This is something that we've needed for a long, long time. It's a new way of doing business.
We've always expected students to be college ready, but now we really need to be student ready. We need to make sure that we are, in all of our practices, putting students at the forefront and not having that be an afterthought, as opposed to what's easiest for us or what's best for us.
We are the pathway for the masses. We are the pathway for the future economy of California. And we need to figure out what it is that we need to do a better job of training our students so that they can achieve their dreams, so that they can go out and achieve their career aspirations and contribute to California's economies.
Hey, so I'm back. Nope, not back behind the coffee counter, back in college. Do I seem a little more upbeat? Well, yeah, I've got a clearer path to a college degree. I found the classes I need to graduate, and I can track my progress the entire way. Soon I'll have a degree and a career and a house. For now, I have class with my favorite professor.
When they come into college, in a guided pathways college, they're now focused more within a program, a major or a meta major. So immediately the student finds community. Rather than wandering, taking classes here and there, they're surrounded by a community of faculty within that area of interest.
It is not for the faint-of-hearted, but we are having brave and courageous conversations. Together we are locking arms and we're making students at the absolute center of everything that it is that we are doing and the main purpose for the reason for change. So it's not about us individually or collectively, it's about our students, and it makes the decisions ultimately very easy to make.
I took my current role as dean because one of my friends, a faculty member from Cabrillo, said, I think this is the one thing I want to end my career on because I think it's really going to make a change for our students. And that's pretty much what I think too.
So as you can see, there's some new mantras forming now out of this movement. And I want to review a couple of those because there were some sound bites in there that certainly resonated with me. One of them was the comment that was made about this is not for the faint of heart, but we are having some courageous conversations. The other is that I think initially as I watched this video, I kept saying to myself, and I had to resist it a little bit, we already do that. Well, that's what we do. That's how we operate. And I think the next step in making a transition like this is to take a look at what we really do and examine it. Again, looking at the student data. If you picked data from any source that we have, whether it's the state scorecard, whether it's the guided pathways data, whether it's our own MIS system, whether it's Data Mart, any metric you want to use, I think we would all look at really important elements of that data and acknowledge that we're just still not happy with those results. We know that we can do better. So one of the new mantras is organizing the work of the district around the needs of students, not necessarily the convenience of the college. And I think this is an offshoot of the transition we've been making for the last 5 years. Remember when that Student Success Act was passed in 2012? And the shift, all of that shift, we had it right here on this screen, is that we're moving from providing student access to being more accountable for student success. So many of the structures that we have in place where we say we're already doing that were built on a model that was focused on access. And I think we need to look at those same practices now and refine them so that they focus on student success. We all use this metaphor all the time, and guided pathways is another example of emphasizing that we need to continue to deconstruct the silos. When we talk about how we've operated over the decades, we know as community college that we have had, separated departments and divisions, whether it's district level student services, academic services, admin services, or even at the academic level, different disciplines and departments. So the idea that we need to restructure, deconstruct those silos, and we know we're not going to rip them all apart. They need to exist, but there's got to be a really thoughtful system that crosses over and brings those together. So again, that shift from access to success, I think, forces us to go through one of those really challenging, as she said, not for the faint of heart, courageous conversations. If we just take a simple look, and when I say we, all morning this morning, you guys, I'm not only talking about COS. I'm talking about community college across the state, because this isn't just our challenge. We've all been very similar in the past, and we're all similar now as we try to make these transitions. But let's take a look at our espoused values. If you were to pick up our brochures, if you were to look at the things that we promote, if you were to listen to what we say, this is kind of what we say. Of course we believe that we should have success for all students. Of course we want to be and say we are student-centered. We are here for the students. We do care about transfer and completion. No one's making that argument. It's really a matter now of what are our actions and behaviors that demonstrate our commitment to that. So then when you hold the mirror up and you take a look at the values that we actually put into action, and it's kind of a hard assessment to go through, but if you look at just how we're structured in community college, there are certainly confined hours for services. There are challenges that we have in the structures that currently exist. So if I'm a student in our community who's working and I want to major in an area, maybe a health-related or a science area, but I can only take classes at night, some of the key requirements for me to succeed, we don't offer then. It's not even available. And so those are the kinds of things. The one-on-one model for support is fabulous. It's the most effective. We do it in counseling. We do it in tutoring. We do it through office hours. But at the same time, with tens of thousands of students, it's the least efficient. And so are there different ways that we can approach providing that information, services, and support? We have our own course scheduling sequences. Again, remember how we were initially built to provide access. Not necessarily to align completely with a student who needs to take the courses within 2 years and finish. We've done that kind of assessment. Our division chairs have done that. Our academic deans have done that. So now we know. We know that if we just look at how we build the schedule, it's designed so that in some cases, even if we had access to students 24 hours a day, we don't have the courses in the right offering sequence for them to complete in 2 years. It's a structural flaw. And when we say scheduling, I know we always think, that's negotiable, that's a master agreement issue. It is. We understand that. I also think if you look carefully now at our master agreement and how the article in the faculty master agreement for scheduling has been reordered and clarified, we still have all the tools in there we need to do scheduling that would be better. Locally approved priorities. There's lots of things we've put in place here over the years for COS that we believe have been the best for what we've been doing. Let's take a look at those again. Some of them may still be working beautifully. Prerequisites, paths to completion, but some of them may need to be adjusted. I think the guided pathways gives us a vehicle to look at those. And then the idea of reactive versus proactive, we actually got this from our student focus groups. What we ask students is talk to us about the things that you feel are most important to you in completing, and how can we respond to you better? And they talked about, you heard the one student, I had 98 units, but I wasn't lined up right. And so we can take a look now with some of our databases at where students are, and we can identify students who might not only be within one class or two of completing a degree, but they might have already completed everything they need for a degree or a certificate. So we're trying to look now at how we can identify those students in a group, and rather than send them an email that says, hey, if you fill out the application and you apply for your degree or your certificate, you're going to be able to get it. We do that now. That's where we would say we're doing that. But what we're saying is, if you look at our completion results, it's not getting the volume that we want. So here's a different approach. Identify that body of students, bring them into Hospital Rock 134, put them in front of a laptop, have counselors and administrators and faculty come in and help them right there, right then, complete the certificate process. Complete it. When you leave today, you will have done it, and it's going to be coming in the mail. It's a little bit more deliberate, it's a little bit more proactive than reactive. Just one example. So we've always focused on getting students ready for college. You heard the young lady in the video say, maybe we want to try to get the college now ready for students. And if you think about this, you could pull the college and students out of either of these mantras, and you could plug in a business and the consumer. And the same movement's going on everywhere. We're focusing on how to reach the consumer where they are. Go out and address what they need. One example, silly little example, but it will resonate. You know, for years when we wanted to order food to come to the house, we always had an option, right? Pizza. Call and order, have some pizza delivered. Well, that wasn't enough. Customers didn't want that. We thought, you know what? If I want that club sandwich with curly fries from Denny's, I have to go to Denny's. I have to drive down there and I have to sit in the restaurant. But that's my favorite late night meal. Now, I just call DoorDash. And guess what? They've contracted with Denny's. They'll put my order in. They'll get it in a nice styrofoam box, and in 18 minutes, I'll have my club sandwich and my curly fries at my door. So it really is consistent with what's happening around us. We're, as an educational institution, we're just being asked to think a little bit more like that within our realm. And that's this idea, let precision drive our persistence. Let's look a little deeper. Let's mine our data. You know where we do this really well? I was thinking about this yesterday. We do this really well in our intercollegiate athletic arena. If you look at how coaches approach the development of their teams. We have basketball going on right now. So Coach Alvarado, Coach Smith, they have ladies basketball, men's basketball. They have a general practice plan in place, right? Everybody goes out and works through the practice plan. And then they have a special element where everybody's going to get some time to shoot free throws. And so they put everybody through the free throw shooting drill, and they're watching them, right? And if Stan's up there doing his free throws, and I have to make 50 in a row before I can leave, and I've been there for 3 days, you know, Rusty's going to pull me aside, and he's going to break down what I'm doing. He's going to figure out why my free throws aren't working quite as well. He's going to study the body mechanics. He's going to look at the spin on the ball. He's going to work with trajectory. He's going to start me closer to the basket, and he's going to be moving me back further. And I'm going to drill and adjust until I'm successful at doing that. That's the kind of precision now that we're swinging that lens over, and we're asking, let's take a look at our student data and see what that shows us. So we know, as I said, our student achievement data is there. We have student status data. What's the status of our students? Like I mentioned earlier, if we know we've got students within a class or two of a degree, let's do something different to get that completed. Or the certificate, let's do something different to initiate that completion. Convene student focus groups regularly. This is a takeaway we had from Mount San Antonio College, who was here right before winter break. Those of you who came to that presentation, you listened to our former president, Dr. Scroggins, talk about how they hold student focus groups now on a weekly basis. And it's constantly asking for questions and input to help drive some decisions. Simplify our processes, we've been working on that. Course scheduling for student demand, we've touched on that. Assess and revise our local decisions, and ultimately reduce the number of units to completion. The average in the state of California is about 98 units for a student who transfers. College of the Sequoias is a little better than that. We're about 87. That's still about 20 units more than what's needed. So the idea when we used to live under access, that students could come in and explore and move around a little bit, or have time to remediate, take a couple classes before I enter college level math or English. Those are the changes that this Guided Pathways movement is asking us to try to examine and implement. Okay, so very quickly, how could Guided Pathways help us further transform our district? We know that we have a great relationship with our feeder districts. We sit on what's called the Tulare Kings Collaborative. So every month, superintendents, presidents from College of the Sequoias and West Hills, we're all meeting together with the feeder schools in our areas, and we're talking about how their exit standards are changing and how we can align our entrance standards to better match those up and help students be successful. Guided Pathways can be one of those channels for us to continue to do that. Improve our assessment and placement measures. This was the big announcement about AB 705 and multiple measures. No longer using a single placement exam, but a single placement exam in concert with other multiple measures. We have ourselves deep into that now. We're moving forward for next year. I think we're going to find successful solutions there. Early academic and career advising. You heard the lady in the video use the term meta majors. It really gets at the comment the young man said when he said, well, I opened the catalog and there were 34 classes to pick from, and I couldn't really narrow my focus. So the concept of meta majors is to take a look at our catalog and start to group them into smaller chunks. More so maybe than where they are now, so that a student is looking, if they want to major in some field of health occupations, that they're in that category with all of those courses. And to be a little more deliberate, maybe a little more prescriptive, propose to them, have patterns and models that are going to be their default. We're going to register you and enroll you in this model so that unless you tell us differently, we know this one works. And students before you have been successful with this. And what students are telling us is they're okay with that. Our young people right here would tell you that. I ask them. I meet with them every month. And they're like, yeah, I'm okay if you take away some of my options because I want to tell you what I want and I want your expertise to help me get there. A little different than when we were focused on access. Enrolling for success, you've heard the 15 to finish movement. It's a simple math equation. If we continue to tell students that the minimum number of units you need to be full-time is 12, and we enroll them in 4 semesters at 12 units, we've guaranteed they won't finish. And so just starting to get students to aspire to more units, period. And we know that that's going to throw a wrench into our system. It's going to cause some collisions. We want to put them in more classes, but the classes aren't available. There will be a domino effect, but those are the not for the faint of heart, courageous conversations, because those schools who have committed to every student as a standard being enrolled in 15 units are seeing completion rates at a faster clip. Shorten the path in the developmental math and English. We've talked about that. And clear maps to completion. Again, let's organize how the course offerings are so that students can fulfill their goal within 2 years. And then finally, we know we can't just wipe out developmental classes. We can't just say we're no longer going to have remedial courses. That would be a disaster. So if we're going to put students in higher levels to begin with, we have to think about the co-requisite classes. What should they be taking as a supplement right alongside? And you're all going, that's going to be a scheduling nightmare. It is. But We have examples now from 25 colleges about how they're trying to skin that cat, and they're having success. So let's take a look. Let's take a look. These are the initiatives that we have been embracing over the last few years. If you're wondering why we needed winter break and we were tired, this might be part of it. And the good news is we still have all of those, and we have these expectations in addition. So these are all various ideas that have evolved over the last 5 or 6 years. You know how it is once there's an idea in place and the chancellor's wrapped his or her name around it, it doesn't go away very quickly. And so we're continually talking about how we can blend these and not duplicate effort. So we've been really good at trying to do that. We have a commitment to integrating our work, and we have since we began COS 2.0. So we're not really intimidated by this. We just know it's a lot of hard work. The Guided Pathways is a framework for us to take all that work we've been doing and refine it and do that gap analysis and start making some subtle changes one at a time until we improve and find a better overall outcome. What's our vehicle to do that? Our strategic plan. If you look at our participatory governance structure and our integrated planning model, that was built when we all sat down together and worked to design that. We knew we were going to get multiple initiatives every year because it's a political process. And so we expected that there would be continued expectations for change. So we designed our system that way. But the only way it works and it doesn't turn into another layer for us or sand in our gears is if we incorporate it into our strategic plan. So the work that we've been doing the last semester to develop those draft objectives and then more importantly to look at those actual planned actions are what's helping us take all of this information and fit it into our system. Because once it's in our strategic plan and our planned actions, we have a machine to measure that, to adjust to it, to improve, and to try it again. It drives the allocation of resources, it drives the request for staff, it drives our elements of success in our department and our division. So we're feeling comfortable about the fact that we have a process that will allow us to do this in a healthy way and not have it break our back. So to that end, let's take a quick look at where we are now on the timeline for finishing our next strategic plan. Just a quick reminder of where we were on the accreditation timelines. And now here's how we've laid right alongside that the work of our strategic plan. We had task force members recruited and selected in early spring last year. They convened just before we met in the fall this year for training. We worked on a model for how that strategic plan assessment would take place, and we developed some strategies and some protocols. We held our first strategic plan summit, and then we began in each of those 4 goals that we have in our strategic plan. We had subgroups for each goal. Goal 1, Goal 2, Goal 3, Goal 4. Those subgroups then started meeting regularly and incorporating information from other faculty and staff to start assessing our strategic plan and helping us develop the next round of objectives. IPEC has conducted a pretty thorough review now of all of the draft objectives. I think yesterday was the last meeting maybe on getting that done. So, as we move forward now, our Board of Trustees will have their annual planning retreat a week from today, and that will be their opportunity as a board, and this is what our planning manual says. It'll be their opportunity as a board to see those draft objectives, to provide their input, ask their questions, seek clarification. Then we have a meeting plan for our joint constituent groups. This is a model we adopted after our accreditation, and we have our executive board from Academic Senate, we have representatives from our unions, we have Instructional Council, we have IPEC, we have Dean's Council. This constituent group comes together and processes those draft objectives one more time, and then we finalize them and we take them through our governance process. They go to be read at Academic Senate, they go to be reviewed at District Governance Senate, and finally they're brought to the Board of Trustees for the adoption of our next 3-year strategic plan. Okay, so I'm kind of moving in on the close now. Who remembers this diagram and where it first came from? Thank you, thank you, thank you. When we started the COS 2.0 mantra, our idea was to really use the crisis that we were pulling ourselves out of as a way of creating a new culture for College of the Sequoias. And it was really important to us that that be valid, it be legitimate, and it be sustainable. We didn't want to just write our way out of accreditation trouble and put a document on the shelf. We really wanted to make a healthier institution, help us transition. So we adopted the COS 2.0 mantra. The last few images I want to share with you this morning are just a way of recapping a little bit of where we are in that process as we start this spring semester. And you just listened to 3 of the most important things we're going to be doing: our accreditation, self-report, our next strategic plan, and certainly, selecting our next superintendent president. We all want to make sure that throughout that process, what we committed to here is sustained. So let's take a look at those continued signs of a more vibrant culture. First of all, we have been and we are becoming more student-centered now, particularly under the newer definition, that shift from access to success. Okay, we're all committed to that. There's been no pushback. We feel really good about that. But we had to commit to some core values here. Open and honest forms of communication, multiple forms, whether it's verbal, whether it's written, whether it's in policy or practice. There has to be honesty, and honesty is tested best by it being transparent. It's a no-secrets environment. We make decisions very openly. We plan the budget very openly. We address issues at the Senate level, at the DGS level, at the board level, very openly. Is it easy? No, because there's just disagreement. And I think what we've gotten really good at is processing disagreement without being mad at each other. And that's an important core value that I'm grateful that I feel like is instilled here, and we're all committed to that. That builds the trust. And so now we can agree to disagree. We've always said that. We agree to disagree. And then we went and conspired with our friends about how to get back at the person I'm mad to. And we don't do that anymore. And trust me, I think over the last 5 years, our system's been tested, okay? And that breeds respect, of course. And we are committed to collaboration. You see it in our policies. You see it in our structures. It's not a buzzword. Look at how we work. And that's because we have strong systems in place. Roles and responsibilities are defined. You're going to have a new president next year. He or she will not be able to come in and say, I have a different idea than all these things. We're going to try this. There's a process for how we change now, and it's built in to the systems that we have, and all of you have a voice in whether or not those changes take place. That's really good stuff. We're data-driven, for sure, more now than we've ever been. I personally feel like we have a really strong data division. I'm so grateful for that. It's more valuable now than it's ever been. And we are committed to continuous improvement. The thing that isn't up here that probably should be, and I didn't know what kind of words to put to it, is that we're also really comfortable now checking each other. And I've had everyone from a faculty member to a classified employee to a manager come into my office and kind of wave their finger at me and go, you're not doing this right. You better explain this because this isn't what I think we're supposed to be doing. That to me is a healthy organization. When people feel good being able to come in and express that kind of concern and hold ourselves accountable. Continued signs of that vibrant culture. These processes have taken some tests. Right? We've had some disagreements, and I'm so happy that we've been able to work through them. It's hard. They're uncomfortable. But I feel good about the fact that we've continued to revise these processes. We make them better every year, and as I said earlier, we hold each other accountable. They've been tested, and There have been efforts on the parts of different interest groups and parties to employ, older tactics, older strategies to disrupt things, and the system has corrected itself and not allowed anything disruptive or at least anything mean-spirited to occur. Great for our institution. And then growth. Growth is a continued sign of our success. We're one of just a handful of community colleges out of the 113 statewide that's growing in enrollment. The trend across the state right now is declining enrollment in community colleges. They're even holding annual workshops now on how to manage contraction, attrition, reduction in costs. And here we are in the Central Valley growing by a substantial clip. We think part of that is because we've had a population here of students who have typically not accessed higher education, and we just weren't reaching out and getting them. So now we're doing that much better. And because of that, we're continuing to buck the trend statewide. But what it does do is it causes us to have to adjust a little bit. So you'll remember a couple years back when we were working really hard to hit the 1,000 FTES mark at our Hanford Center so that we could get official center status. And when we did, and when we achieved that and we celebrated it, it brought a one-time influx of $1.1 million new dollars for that year. So we put that in a fund and we said, let's take a look now, because of the growth, what that Hanford Center campus needs. We went to our students and we asked them, what's missing? What will make this feel like a more supportive and healthy environment for you? We've added an instructional classroom building this year that'll allow us to expand and meet the classroom needs that we have. But as important for the students is they wanted some sort of a student gathering area. For those of you who have ever been to the Hanford campus, you know that it's a beautiful building and beautiful facility, but there really wasn't like a student center, a quad. There was nothing like the beautiful quad we enjoy here on the Visalia campus. So we proposed a project to the board. They approved it with those funds that were earned by Hanford, and we started to take a look at how to move things around. So the first thing that happened is the central office stuff that was in the front, one of the education buildings, moved to the originally designed administrative offices toward the back of the campus. Dr. Robinson came to us and she said, hey, this is going to be a second order change for our kids. They're not going to know where the hub is. They're not going to come back here. So Kristen, she proposed a solution. That's what the windows at the new hub look like today. Okay, so yeah, if the students can't find that, we need another focus group. And then we talked about that big grass area in the middle. They wanted some sort of a gathering place. So this is the old front entrance where you came through the education building and the public safety building, and you walked out to a big grass lull. Now you hit the outdoor, what we're calling student pavilion. Based on the growth, based on what students want, we're creating an environment now. This is a shot inside underneath. It's a big, cover, basically, but it's done nicely in the same architecture as the building. You can see it's got ceiling fans and lights. It's piped for sound and video. We'll be able to put electronic messaging out there, and they'll be able to hold events. It'll have tables and chairs for students and staff. It'll be an area where the community can celebrate events. It'll hold about 225 people inside. It's got some big flat walls that will become white screens for information and projection and so on. And it's got a little amphitheater, which is really pretty. And we think it's kind of cool. And so we're really excited about the fact that we're growing and that the resources that growth brings, we're able to invest in providing more opportunities for students and staff. Okay, so I'm coming to the close now. We've all heard this little saying before: excellence is a state of being, not a state of becoming. And that's our commitment, I think, to the continuous improvement. And you all know that, or many of you know, that my daughter is a dancer. And of course, we had a really challenging year this last year. And she taught me a lot through that process. But one of the things that she reminded me is how important hard work is, especially when you want something to be good. And so we've all espoused in the past our desire for the level of expectation we have for our college. But I think until the last 5 years, when we actually put these kinds of structures in place, we weren't sure exactly the time, energy, and effort it was going to take to do all that. And it takes a lot. You know, the participatory governance model, the opportunity we have to be a part of decision making, that's darn hard work. It requires people, time, energy, and so we're gradually building momentum to do that effectively and be able to sustain it. But this is a picture of a beautiful ballerina, one that my daughter shared with me, and you can see the elegance and the beauty, and on the surface, this is just a spectacular image. But what's really represented there, underneath all of that, and the metaphor for me, the euphemism here is that we're an outstanding institution. And in our community, we're a revered institution. We're well respected. And that's fabulous. If we left it up to our local community, I don't think we'd have people pushing on us to do things dramatically different because they trust us to do our work and do it well. So if we're the ones that are the gatekeepers for making improvement happen inside the institution, we want to have that commitment to do it. But underneath that beautiful image, there's some really hard work. There's some really hard work that goes into that. And so we're committed to that hard work. We're committed to continuing the growth that we have and the development that we have as an institution. And I know personally that while this is the last time I'll be able to share with you at a spring convocation, I'm going to continue to be a supporter of College of the Sequoias and to contribute and help in any way that I can, but I'm just excited now to see how this group of people, the talent that we have in this room and in this college and in this district, takes on what we have in front of us and transforms that into the next generation of excellence for our students here at College of the Sequoias. So with that, I'd like to remind you where we go next. I'd like to thank you so much for your time this morning. I want to wish you all a happy new year and a great second semester. We're adjourned.